In this movie, we will begin to create a functional user interface. That is, a form which has the user in mind. There are many ways you can make your Visual Basic project much more user-friendly and adaptable to the user's needs. As you can see, I have this program called Address Label Maker that will allow the user to enter their name, street, city, state, and zip code, and then by clicking a button you will then create a mailing label. We're not concerned about the code to create the creating label right now. We will in due time. But at this point I want to focus on the functionality of the labels and text boxes on the form. Of course, if I run this program, I could simply enter the data by either using the mouse to move from one text box to the next. I could also use the tab key to enter the data. And the program does indeed work. However, we want to give the user an alternative to using either the tab key or the mouse. This alternative is through the use of what's referred to as access keys. Access keys do not require any coding, and you can create them very easily. All I want to do is to create an access key for the label which is associated with the text box where I will enter the first name. So I click on the address for the first name and go to the text box where the words first name appear, and I'm simply inserting an ampersand before the letter F in first name. We can see the ampersand in the property window, but what the user will see is what is shown on the form, and that is an underlined letter under the letter F. And that is a visual cue to the user that they can now press the letter F along with the Alt key to activate that item. Likewise, for the last name, I can enter an ampersand before the L in last name. Now, I'm using the first letter of each of these words simply as a matter of convenience. Nothing says they have to be the first letter, and we'll see that in a moment. So I created street with an underscore under the C, this S. I'm now creating city, access key of C, placing the ampersand before the letter C. Now I've already used the letter S in street, so to avoid a conflict I'm going to use the letter T, the second letter, in the word state. So that will become my access key for state. And then zip code will be Z. So now I have an access key associated with each label, which is in turn associated with each text box. You might ask, well, how does this association between labels and text boxes exist? And that is through the property called tab index. If we focus on the label first name, we see there's a tab index of 0. That is the lowest possible tab index there is. That is, that's where the focus will begin. However, in Visual Basic, labels cannot receive focus. They instead transfer the focus immediately to the next item that has the next highest tab index. So in this case, our text box immediately beside first name is going to have a tab index of 1. So therefore, the focus will begin at that location. Last name in turn has a tab index of 2, but again, remember, labels cannot receive focus, so the text box adjacent to it will actually receive the focus when the user presses the Alt-L access key, since that has the next tab index. And then the rest follow in suit. Street, city has a tab index of 6, followed by 7. State has a tab index of 8, followed by 9 in the text box, and zip code has a tab index of 10, and its corresponding text box has a tab index of 11. So each of my text boxes now will receive focus in turn based on the user's use of the access keys. So let's run this. As you might expect, the first name already has the focus, so there's nothing else to do there but type in the first name. Now, instead of using the tab key or the mouse, I'm going to press Alt L, which is my access key for last name. I will then type in the last name, and then I will use the Alt S for the street. Now let's say I want to skip the city and go directly to the zip code. I can do so now that I have access keys without tabbing or using the mouse. I can simply hold down the Alt key and press Z, and that takes me directly to the zip code text box. I'll type in the zip code, and now I'll return to the city perhaps by pressing Alt C, and I will enter the city, and then Alt T, since that's my access key for the state. And then click Create Label, and as you can see, my project is still working just fine. But the key here is the use of the access keys. As your programs become more complex, you will want to make your programs as functional and as user-friendly as possible. Making good use of access keys is a great way of doing that.